Hello, this is Dr. Hickman to give a brief explanation on the introduction in Chapter 1 of Understanding by Design by Wiggins and McTighe. Understanding by Design is also referred to as UbD. You will hear me refer to it as such throughout this presentation and also throughout the remainder of the course. Also, for the sake of clarity, you see Dr. Hepner's name there on the screen. He created the PowerPoint. I just decided to add some narration to make some connections between some things that you guys have been discussing through your discussion board posts and then also in your reflections. So without any further ado, we shall move forward. As it relates to the Danielson framework, the introduction in Chapter 1 covered Domain 1, which is planning and preparation. Much of this book will cover Domains 1 and 3 as they are also the focus of this class. However, Domains 2 and 4 are essential to being a great teacher and are of equal importance to being a successful classroom instructor. The first part of the introduction begins with four stories about different scenarios. Two of them are real and two of them could be. As I read in many discussion board posts and some of your reflections, these are many of the scenarios that you guys can identify with. The first one focuses on retention. And many of you have talked about how when you were in high school, it was a cycle of lecture, notes, test, repeat. Lecture, notes, test, maybe a lab, maybe a quiz, and then repeat it all over again. And for too often, school has been all about memorization, or in the era of high stakes testing, simply teaching to the test. When I was a principal and we were preparing for the PSSAs, taking the test was the academic focus. Understanding the material, however, was, although important, was not the priority. The second vignette dealing with the apples is very common in elementary schools, and I am sure that some school right now is making applesauce and planning a field trip to the farm. It's cute, but is it worth academic time? And a better question is there a way to make it worthy of academic time? And I think that the answer is yes. Not even so much as just learning about the apples, but what can students learn in this unit about biology and seeds, parts of a plant, photosynthesis, maybe descriptive writing, art, geography if they want to chart where apple groves are, where they grow the best at. Those are all things that could be learned about if the teacher wanted to do a better job of that. Unfortunately, like I said, there's a school right now that's getting ready for the Apple Festival, which has nothing to do with actual learning. And the sad part really is that the teachers who are doing that really think that the students have learned something useful about apples. And this third vignette really gets to the point of understanding as it relates to mathematics. Obviously, you cannot have a third of a bus. So what is it that the students did not understand about numerical concepts where they could not add just another bus to take those remaining 12 people? And this is a situation where it's about a real life situation in learning. And this is something that many of you have mentioned in your discussion board post about making it relevant to people's lives. However, this was relevant to real life, but there was something these students did not understand. And as a teacher, we need to figure out what it is that they didn't understand and what it was that the teacher did or did not do that got in the way of that understanding. This fourth vignette I know all too well. Now it's April, you didn't cover everything, so now either we're skipping stuff or we're skimming it. Um, I had some cool activities planned, like a debate, like a field trip, but I got to get through this book, and we never ever get to the Vietnam War in U.S. history, and I'm determined that these kids know something about the something that happened in Vietnam. So from now on, class is going to be sit down, shut up, and write. Just as an aside, ladies and gentlemen, never tell your students to shut up. It's quite rude. But back to my point, if you can skip or skim entire chapters or eras of history or pieces of information, then you need to ask yourself, why were you teaching it in the first place? You need to ask yourself, how or why was it important for students to learn it? And more importantly, you need to ask yourself, why didn't you determine that it was not important or determine its level of importance prior to the start of the school year? So altogether, these four vignettes represent what Wiggins and McTighe call the twin sins, of design. Either stuff is very fun and it's activity based, but has very little academic merit, such as the Apple unit, or maybe you do a Renaissance fair after teaching a unit on Shakespeare, or it's very content driven. Let's name every battle and every general from the Civil War. Let's locate every battle on the map, and let's talk about troop movements during the Battle of Gettysburg. There's a lot of content there, but does it merit academic time? Remember what we talked about this past week, ladies and gentlemen. Do we lose sight of the game as we constantly focus on different skills? Here we could be focusing on skills about learning the map, but are we really losing sight of the game? So Wiggins and McTighe offer a new framework that really respects the work that teachers do, or at least that they should do. I often refer to teaching as a craft because when it is done right, it is something that you design like an artist does from beginning to end, or in this case, from the end to the beginning. You will design the curriculum, the lesson plans, the handouts, and the assessments that you will use in your class. If you find that all you are using are worksheets from the textbooks, then you need to ask yourself, who's teaching the class, you or the publishing company? So, getting back to the twin sins as we move this forward as it relates to UbD and the framework that Wiggins and McTighe have. So, when you're talking about things being activity oriented, is it hands on or is it minds on? Are they just doing something to do something, or does the activity require them to not just be actively engaged, but also to involve them with critical thinking, to involve them being creative, to work collaboratively with their classmates? Alternatively, when you're talking about coverage, are you just trying to muscle through information, whether or not the students learn it or understand it? Social studies teachers are notorious for this. We're going to just plow through information, and whether or not the kids get it or not is up to them. Mathematics teachers do that as well. We're going to get through all this information because they have to know it for the test. Whether or not they understood it or not is a whole different situation. To that end, I want you guys to think about how to get students to uncover and discover things as opposed to covering your content. And that's probably a word that we shouldn't be using in education at all. But how will it change your thinking about your teaching if you're trying to get your students to uncover their understanding and to make discoveries as they go through your particular class?